This is the moment that rocked baseball's culture. The homer that launched 1,000 memes. The Blue Jays' first postseason in 22 years. Surely this is why we watch sports. But not for some people. By the next day, the media exploded. Columns were written, hot takes spewed forth. Play the game the right way, they said. Respect the game. And without fail, the bats flip and the controversies follow. So, quick question. Who flips out about bat flips? In the beginning, there was baseball, and it was good. The game as we know it was codified in the late 1800s all across the United States. But it wasn't the respectable endeavor we consider it today. Baseball was rough and tumble, and all too often, games ended in the 19th century version of this.
Everybody will rush in and have a little bit of a heated confrontation.
Alongside the official rules, another set of rules evolved. A set of implied, unwritten rules, decided on informally by the players to help avoid all that. The cardinal violation of the unwritten rules was celebration.
The idea of celebrating an individual accomplishment was regarded as really against the unwritten rules of baseball. If you violated the rules and it looked to others in the stands as if you were actually having fun playing the game of Major League Baseball, you were labeled an eccentric, a rube, a hayseed, a Cyrus. It was okay to be angry on the field.
Showing some emotion in the dugout.
Watch out. He's upset.
But it wasn't okay to have fun.
It's one of the weirdest quirks of baseball history that a stoic, emotion-free style of play developed in the late 1800s in MLB. And it didn't have to. Let's try this again. In the beginning, there was baseball. And it was good. So good, it started to spread. First to Cuba, then throughout the Caribbean, then Central and South America. By the first official World Series in 1903, leagues were developing all over the world, with distinct cultures different from the majors. Not to mention several Negro leagues within the United States. And while the official rules are all mostly the same no matter where you play, the unwritten rules, they vary drastically.
In the Negro leagues, the only unwritten rules was that there were no unwritten rules. So if you don't want me to flip my bat, you better get me out. And it wasn't necessarily about showing up anybody. The Negro leagues understood that baseball was indeed entertainment. So when you went to those games, you were going to be thoroughly entertained. It was just celebrating what you had done. This is a tough game.
When Jackie Robinson integrated MLB, he brought that joy with him. Sports writers at the time called it showboat baseball. Two baseball cultures, nurtured in isolation, clashed. The unwritten rules became a weapon to be wielded against the Negro League style.
Jackie got thrown at with regularity. And I think a lot of that had to do with fear.
It was only after the infusion of African American and Latin American players in the 1950s that more flamboyant styles came to be welcomed.
Over the next 3 decades, baseball only got more diverse. By the 90s, Black and Latin players made up nearly 40% of the league. As their influence grew, they brought more of their individuality and personality to the game.
So there's always been those players who kind of brought that Negro League swag. Rickey Henderson was the king of swag.
Even as Ken Griffey Jr. became the game's biggest star, he was criticized for wearing his hat backwards. They said it was disrespectful. The game was changing. And not everyone was happy about it. And that's where bat flips come in. Bat flips have been around a lot longer than you might think. Benches didn't clear on this bat flip. That's Mickey Mantle, by the way. Or this one. Or this one. Bat flipping has always been against the unwritten rules in the US. Some players, especially veterans, just got away with them. So what changed? In 2001, a rookie Jimmy Rollins flipped his bat. Who could have known it would spark national outrage?
Well hit, watch that baby, way out of here.
You don't know what's an unwritten rule until you cross that line and someone says, this is not how you're supposed to do it. And I was always the person that asked why. Like, well, why couldn't I do it? I was never afraid to challenge an unwritten rule. Because if it's not written, is it really a rule, or is this someone's opinion on how I should conduct myself?
Klein now is screaming at the rookie Jimmy Rollins.
So it had nothing to do with Steve Klein or the Cardinals, nothing at all. But on the outside, here's an unwritten rule, a rookie showing up an older player. No, it wasn't like that. And they said something to me, and I was like, I really don't care. I did my job, period.
Bat flipping was getting more common across the league, with the loosening of the unwritten rules going back to integration. The bat flip itself was undeniable. For players willing to weather the criticism, it became a calling card, not as an insult to the pitchers, but as a form of self-expression. A stake in the ground that baseball belongs to everyone, everywhere. And that's where things stood until the mother of all bat flips.
The Blue Jays haven't been in the playoffs for 22 years. The series was tied, and winner takes all kind of game, and emotions were running high. So it ended up being a pretty intense game. I was so locked in, so in the zone. I can't really recall the details for the next 10 minutes after I hit the ball. It was unbelievable. The stadium was shaking. It was just raw emotion and reaction. And, I was fully into that moment and for sure did not plan it. I don't know what happened. It just kind of came out of me, and it was a great moment. There's the bat, by the way.
Batista's bat flip changed the discourse. Fans, at least most of them, loved it. They saw it for what it was. Pure, unbridled emotion. This was a turning point for the bat flip.
Boy, that was a high flip.
And I want those guys to be fully in the game. That's how their true talent comes out. That's how it's in full display. Let's just have fun with it. I mean, it's part of the game. In the game of baseball, we experience enough failure, especially for hitters. If you're successful 30% of the time is when you're great. So when you have a little success, why not enjoy it a little bit?
And some pitchers are actually fine with bat flips.
I love bat flips, for one. I love them. We need that in our game today. We need that, man.
But still, columns will inevitably get written, and sports talk shows will light up the phones every time a hitter lets one flip.
It's about respect.
We're stuck having the same argument over and over and over.
Let the kids play. Well, what do you want?
Incredibly, bizarrely even, the same circumstances that brought us to this moment happened almost identically elsewhere, with a radically different outcome.
Early parts of the league, the thinking of the way to play baseball in the KBO was due to the Japanese influence. It was very put your head down, routine.
Until one player changed everything.
Yang Jun-hyuk brought the swagger, basically, to the KBO. And when he would hit a home run, he knew, and everybody else in the stadium knew, that he hit a home run, and he enjoyed it. He would flip his bat, and he would basically make the home run for the fans. He knew that the fans were celebrating to have a good time, and he wanted to put on a show for them. He goes, I'm an entertainer, I need to entertain them, and that was his way of doing that.
Yang Jun-hyuk didn't play in the Japanese style. After he hit a home run, he threw his hands in the air, flinging the bat. It may sound crazy, but in that bat flip, Yang formed a new identity for Korean baseball.
We call him the godfather of bat flips. After many years of seeing him do that, more players started to loosen up on the field, or even pitchers showing a little more exuberance on a strikeout. When you think of the KBO, I think of bat flips, and when I think of bat flips, I think of Yang Jun-hyuk.
So now there's some history and some context to bat flips and the unwritten rules in general. To say it's just about disrespect is to ignore what the people doing the flips have been saying all along. Listen to them. It's about celebrating cultures. It's about making a sport where hundreds of players represent dozens of countries a little more reflective of that fact. It's about having fun and enjoying doing something hard on the greatest stage. And that should be celebrated.
Fire that bat, Yachty.
Nailed her like a bull in a china shop.
Every
everybody's got their own little bat flip, their own way of doing things.